Last June, after the murder of George Floyd by four Minneapolis police officers, a number of parishioners gathered on Zoom in a series of weekly sessions to discuss what happened, what keeps happening in our country, and how the people of Christ the King must respond. The major outcome of these reflection sessions was the creation of Christ the King's anti-racism ministry, a framework for parishioners to create and participate in various grassroots projects, focusing on promoting racial justice within our own parish and in partnering with ventures in the wider Nashville community. At the end of this series, we'll schedule a town hall meeting for anyone who wants to get more involved, hear about what's been happening, and help us decide what should happen in the future. One of these projects is a working project designed to create opportunities for our community to better understand the history of racism, white supremacy, and how various institutions continue to sustain it in our country, despite the work of our better angels. And this series is the outcome of this work. In 1984, the Black bishops of the US issued a letter, "What We Have Seen and Heard," in which they say the following: "There is a richness in our Black experience that we must share with the entire people of God. These are gifts that are part of an African past, for we have heard with Black ears, and we have seen with Black eyes, and we have understood with an African heart." So far, the church in this country is one which has failed to fully receive and celebrate the gifts of Black Catholics, gifts which, in my opinion, here I'm not quoting, Catholics sorely need if we are to be an instrument of spiritual and social renewal in our country. So with this in mind, it's my great pleasure to welcome today's speaker. Deacon Bill Hill is a native Nashvilleian who attended St. Vincent de Paul and Father Ryan High School. He retired from the Army Corps of Engineers as chief of the legal office after serving 33 years. He became a deacon in 2006, received his master's degree from St. Meinrad in 2012. His wife, Ethelene, is a Baptist minister and also has a master's degree in Christian education. They have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Deacon Bill is on the strategic planning committee at Father Ryan and hopes to assist Father Ryan in preparing for the challenges of the 21st century. We already have a couple of those. He started the Katharine Drexel Scholarship Endowment at Father Ryan to continue the legacy of Saint Katharine Drexel and assisting Black students in acquiring a Catholic education. I'll be sending out some material about this scholarship, about the endowment later this week. Please do consider making a donation to this valuable fund and making our Catholic education more widely available than it has been in the past. So Deacon Bill, we're pleased to have you with us, and you have our full attention.
And move.
Hang on just a second.
You may move over.
Oh, that's better.
I wouldn't.
There's back.
I came here because I wasn't comfortable with Zoom. So I came by John's office and I think we too close to each other. That good?
I think so.
Okay, all right. Great, okay, all right. I think we did good care of the noise thing. You know, last time I did one of these Zoom, I think I've only done one. I couldn't get any sound at all. So this is interesting. But I just want to wish you all good morning. And I'm prepared a slide presentation, which will kind of help me because sometimes I kind of get, and John, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so just use the arrow keys too.
Okay, all right. Okay, we think we got it now. I just call this part of blacks in history in the Catholic Church doing legal segregation. I just kind of put that there. Okay, I'm gonna start with this. You know, I think you had a bunch of scholarly teachers and presenters, and I did this slide. Why study the history of blacks in the National Catholic Church? And I've got a slide with Father Cyprian Davis. Now, Father Cyprian Davis is the father of History of Black Catholics. He's the one who wrote the book back in the 90s. Father Drexel was one of his research assistants at that time. The story is I was at a class at St. Myron, and Father Cyprian asked me some questions about St. Vincent de Paul and asked me some questions about Katharine Drexel, and I couldn't answer. So that's the reason why I was interested in studying the history of Black Catholics. I think I was embarrassed. So as a result of that, I decided to do a paper on it and kind of find out a little background information on it. So I don't, when you were asking the other day about all kind of scholarly books and all that, but this is basically the reason why I became involved. And the other lady in there is my wife. We went up to St. Myron and saw him, one day. And just as an aside, Notre Dame has just started a fellowship for excellence in the area of Black Catholic history and named it in honor of Father Cyprian. Okay, I just want to give you a little background before I started. I didn't have this slide in there, but this morning I woke up and I said, hey, let me give me a little background. I said, I'm gonna start in 1900, but I said, I'll give you a little background before 1900. And I'll just run through these right quick. Prior to Civil War, Blacks attended Church of Whites, was sat in the rear of the church. Probably, that was my experience in a lot of different places, movie theaters or whatever, you could go, but you could sit in the rear. 1838 Sunday school class in the basement residence of Bishop Miles, that had Blacks. 1847 to 1862, the Cathedral of St. Mary's basement. Okay, they had classes there. They taught reading, singing, catechism, and usually accommodated 25 to 60 Blacks, free and slave. And most Blacks were Catholic because the owners were. Okay, no free will, no anything. If your owner is Catholic, then you're Catholic. Sunday school operated until 1878. And then once Blacks were free from slavery and the Sunday school ended, Black Catholics almost disappeared in Nashville. So it's the idea, I guess, when you come up to the point where Blacks have the choice to choose, they didn't choose to be Catholic. In 1894, one source says there were only 40 Black Catholics. I put Catholic, but 40 Black Catholics in the state of Tennessee. And then there were two special schools for Blacks with a membership of 242 and an average attendance of 190. Okay, and that just give you just kind of a little background of what happened. I'm gonna really pick up at 1900. Religious leaders. I had this slide to tell you who the players were. The biggest player was Bishop Thomas Sebastian Byrne. He was the Bishop of Nashville from 1894 to 1923. He was also the 5th Bishop of Nashville. He made the decision that, hey, I'm going to have a ministry for Blacks, and he was the one who made the decision. He was the one who decided to do it. In 1900, in 1900, he decided to go on and do it. He contacted two different organizations. He contacted Josephites, who were a group of priests who served the Black community, and he contacted Mother Katharine Drexel. Okay. The most important of those two was probably Mother Katharine Drexel, who's now Saint Katharine Drexel. When he came in, Katharine Drexel didn't start the school. She donated some money so that they could start a church. And they went and bought an old, they rented an old Presbyterian church downtown. And that's where the Black church was first started in Nashville. Okay. 3 years later, he decided to start a school for Blacks. Now he got with Katharine Drexel, and the issues about the schools, I guess the first issue had to be, what kind of school do you want? And there was some discussion, okay, one, should you educate Blacks? Did they have enough intelligence to educate, to be educated? If you educated them, what would happen to them? Some people thought that, hey, if you educated Blacks, then it'd be harder to control. So the idea was, so do you give them just industrial education, or we let them go into some academic education? Okay, that was discussion that came beforehand. When Bishop Byrne, Katharine Drexel, they decided to give them an industrial and an academic education. Okay, and that was in 1905. They started the first school, which was Holy Family and Immaculate Mother Academy. Now, it was the issue around whether to educate blacks was a big problem. Was a big problem at that particular time. So what you had was that in order to buy the property was called a Keith Plantation. It's right down there where the old mission is, and it was old Keith Plantation. And the idea of educating blacks was something that would not be accepted very well in Nashville. So they had to purchase the property through a third party, a Mr. Friss. When they came down and looked at the property, Katharine Drexel said, "Hey, I'll give $18,000 for it. Let's offer $18,000 for it." And they finally settled on $25,000. She gave $24,000 toward the purchase, and the diocese gave $1,000 toward the purchase. She refused to go any higher than $24,000. Once she came kind of in like a covert operation. She came in a buggy, looked at the property, made the bid, and everything was fine until about 4 days later, the community found out that the property was to be used for the education of blacks. So the original seller, Mr. Keith, he wanted to buy the property back with a 10% bonus. When she wouldn't sell the property, then they decided, okay, two proposals were made. One was to run a railroad track through the property. This was by the city. And then the second was to outlaw higher education for blacks. But anyway, they did manage to survive, that threat to them. School started in 1905. Now, the interesting thing about the school is that it had to be a school for girls only. So you have education, only the Holy Family School, Immaculate Mother Academy, it only served girls until 1917, and when blacks were in, okay? So that was anything. Just let me talk just a little bit about about a couple of the personalities. Father Thomas Plunkett, he was a Josephite, as I indicated before. He was an individual who came into the priesthood late in life. He was very skilled as a builder contractor. Okay, in fact, he built a lot of buildings in the diocese. He and Bishop Byrne. He actually be a part of cathedral, but that was his forte. Katharine Drexel later became Saint Katharine Drexel in 2000. She was the foremost leader in Black education for blacks. Okay, she started 64 schools, I believe, and also she started Xavier University, which is the only Black college in Louisiana. Now, one interesting thing I found about her and Xavier University, they invited her to the opening ceremonies for Xavier University. She said she would come on one condition, that her name not be mentioned at all. Okay, so she was the one. She was the one who provided all the money for Catholic education. Now Bishop Byrne and Katharine Drexel were pretty tight. She started a corporation to assist Black schools, which were in 1907, which was incorporated in Tennessee, and Bishop Byrne was the Secretary of Treasury. Okay, so they had that relationship, both of them. Okay, so you have 1905, you get Holy Family Parish, Immaculate Mother Academy. You go up to 1917, you get you add in the boys also attending, and then let me go through. Okay, so I want to take you through a couple of slides on that. Okay, talk a little bit about Katharine Drexel. Okay, when you talk about Black education, she's it. She provided, the majority of the funds. Okay, the challenges. challenges to Katharine Drexel in Nashville. And she had opposition from all sides. Whites opposed educating blacks. We'll talk about that just a little bit. She had the surreptitious purchase in 1905. The white Catholics didn't want to worship or attend school with blacks. Okay? Black preachers didn't want black kids to go to Catholic schools. In fact, some black preachers told their congregants that if you send your kid to a Catholic school, you're going to hell. Okay, and only females were allowed to attend school until 1917. In spite of the opposition, she was successful in educating thousands of black students in Nashville. In 1901, 50% of Nashville's population was white, but only 50 of its 25,000 blacks were Catholic. Note, Holy Family Church is dedicated on June 29, 1903. That was just a little background information. Let me roll on. Immaculate Mother Academy. I'll just show you a picture of the students, and you can see they were all girls. I think this was a sewing class. They did give some industrial education, and this is a plaque which is present today, over near Drexel Avenue. Just wanted to show you a picture. This is a picture from picture all the male students at Immaculate Mother Academy. Okay. All right. Something I'm going to switch, talk about just a near and dear to me. This is St. Vincent de Paul. Okay, this is the first school for St. Vincent de Paul. Two-story structure, and when they did, what happened was that Immaculate Mother Academy started in 1905. One of the issues, and when the black community, I don't know, I think Dr. Williams talked about it, but the hub of the black community, one of the hubs of the black community was over near Lafayette, where you had all the black institutions. In the 19 teens and 20s, the black institutions, or at least a lot of the black institutions, moved from that area to North Nashville. You had Tennessee State University in 1912. You had Meharry that moved over there. And one of the bishops said, he said, our black ministry is successful in drawing people, but the problem is we can't pay for it. So the idea was that, hey, let's start a mission over St. Vincent de Paul, which is near the schools and near the black folks who have more money, and maybe it can pay for itself. So that was one of the part of the rationale for coming in with St. Vincent, adding St. Vincent to a new location. So in 1932, St. Vincent became a mission of Holy Family. And that's the first school building. They just bought it. School was 4 rooms on the bottom floor, and on the top floor is where the nuns lived. Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament. Okay, just want to show you the buildings. These St. Vincent on the top left, the one I just showed you, that's St. Vincent's first school. On the bottom, that's the friary. And on the top right, that's the church that was built to St. Vincent in 1940. And then on the bottom right, that's the church of St. Vincent that was built in 1959. Cornerstone was laid in 59. It was finished in 60. Just wanted to show you just a little bit of what it was. And I think, okay. Another picture, this was Holy Family. And this was a picture, I think, right around in the 40s, and you can see they had boys, girls, and for a pretty robust population. Now, one thing I need to mention that I didn't mention earlier is that Holy Family and St. Vincent were different in 2 respects. Bishop Byrne and Katharine Drexel differed on one thing, okay? Bishop Byrne's idea was that Catholic schools should be open to Catholics only. Katharine Drexel's idea was that if you were black, you could go to Catholic school. Now, it could be an instrument for evangelization, but the evangelization would occur after someone got into the school. Okay? It was not a requirement to be a Catholic. I think it may have been one of the few, if not the only school in the diocese where it was not a requirement to be a Catholic to get into school. Just gonna show you Immaculate Mother graduates. These are two pictures of the graduation class for Immaculate Mother, the last 2 years, 53 and 54. Now, when Dr. Williams said, he said, well, the question about him was, who were the major leaders in the Black Catholic movement in the diocese? Now, I gave you the pictures of the bishops. You had Bishop Byrne, who started out, and you had Bishop Smith, who actually was Bishop Byrne started the ministry for the Catholic Church, for the Catholics, and he was very supportive of it. You had Bishop Smith, who was fairly supportive of it. Okay, but I'm gonna just tell you who the major leaders in the Black Catholic movement, at least I think. You had Saint Katharine Drexel. She was a major one. You had the order of priests. You had the Josephites. You had the Franciscans. You had the bishops. You had Byrne. You had William Adrian. You had Durham. Those are the principal ones. But I'm going to talk to you a few minutes about some other people too, because part of what I believe is that not only do you have what's there, but you have people in the background. Okay, you have Black bishops who were involved with St. Vincent. And I'm talking to you about Archbishop James Lyke, Ferdinand Cherie, Harold Perry and Joe Perry. These were Black bishops. And the question you may have, well, Nashville never has had a Black bishop. What are you talking about? Well, these were people who in the community. For instance, Harold Perry was someone he was the first Black bishop. Let me put it this right way. In my words, people say he was the first Black bishop in the modern era. Okay. My interpretation of it, he was the first Black bishop who didn't try and pass for white. Okay. But his connection with St. Vincent was that his brother was a doctor here in Nashville at Meharry. And you will see the Meharry connection all the way through this. But his brother was a doctor here in Nashville, so Bishop Perry would come often, as a priest and as a bishop. And Bishop Perry had some ideas on segregation and desegregation. In fact, he later met with President Kennedy and talked about on a committee to talk about how to desegregate, different institutions in the country. Educators. I'm just going to talk to these educators. You had HB, historically Black college and university presidents that were associated with St. Vincent. You had Dr. Fred Humphreys, who was president of TSU, and he had Dr. James Lawson, who's the president of Fisk University. Administrators. You had Mary Craighead. Mary Craighead was the first principal in Nashville to be a principal of a Black person to be a principal of a predominantly white school. Now, when she got that job as head of the predominantly white school, she had to go out to the folks, to the neighborhood and to the different families and try and talk the families into keeping their kids in that school and not transferring. You had Sister Sandra Smithson. She, well, you should know, she's one of the ones who started, she's still around now, 96 years old. She and Mary Craig had started the charter school. Sister Louise Orr. She was a lady who graduated from St. Holy Family Immaculate Mother Academy in 1949. And it was interesting with her because she wanted to become a nun and she had to go, well, Sister Sandra had to apply to 50 different organizations. Well, she said 50, I'm not sure it was quite 50, but she had to apply to several different organizations that would take her as a nun. The same thing with Sister Louise Orr. She's down in Alabama now. And then you had other Black leaders, and we'll talk about these later. Dr. Gadsden Talton. I just want you to kind of keep that name in the back of your mind. To me, he was the one that was most responsible for the desegregation of the schools in Nashville. Actually, he was probably more responsible for desegregation of all the facilities in Nashville. Little known story, he and then this Raleigh Wilson, Paul King, and Robert Craighead. They were the ones who started the Newman Club, a club at St. Vincent. And they actually were responsible for getting, for desegregating the schools. And you had a host of other Holy Family, Immaculate Mother Academy, St. Vincent Christians, students and friends. Okay, I'm gonna try and get some slides and keep it in some kind of order. And I put this on the other day. Dr. E.B. Jefferson, he was a dentist with both Black and white patients, which was kind of unheard of back then. You know, and he received awards at the 1897 Tennessee Centennial Exposition for outstanding work in dentistry. He's a member of Holy Family for over 40 years. Dr. Samuel Freeman, he was a professor of orthopedic surgery at Harvard University. Mildred Hale Freeman, she was the president of Ladies Auxiliary of the National Medical Association and the first female president of St. Vincent Parish Council. And her father was John Henry Hale. He was the president of the National Medical Association, and reportedly did 30,000 surgeries. He had also founded a Millie Hale Hospital, which was across the street from Immaculate Mother Academy. Okay, these are some other folks too, and I kind of go through those. Those are people who were kind of in the background, and to me, they probably forged the idea of desegregation, and they were the ones who pushed for desegregation. And I call this Prelude to Desegregation. Talked a little bit about it before, but you get Harold Perry, and I tried to put your little dates in here now, from 41 to 91. He was associated with St. Vincent. And now it's interesting the way you do this is that, well, let me start down at the bottom because I got these. I'll kind of keep this some kind of chronological. Dr. Charles Johnson, he was president of Fisk University, and I'm not sure if any of you had the Race Relations Institute. Okay, and he was a parent of St. Vincent. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a mortician, and he said, "Bill, can you do a graveside service for Jay Johnson?" And I said, "Who is Jay Johnson?" He said, "Well, Jay Johnson was the Secretary of Homeland Security," is what he told me, under President Obama. And I said, "Okay." So I called somebody and asked them. They said, "Well, Jay Johnson is not dead." They said, if Jay Johnson had died, it'd be all over CNN. Okay. It turned out that this was Jay Johnson's, Jay Johnson Sr. But the Dr. Charles Johnson, who was president of Fisk, he was the foremost sociologist, and he talked up in terms of Black sociology, in terms of desegregation. He decided to send his son to St. Vincent. And my point is that this was the community environment in which it was. You know, you had a man who really pushed for desegregation, and you had Fisk University. So this was the environment that I want you to understand that St. Vincent was in. St. Vincent is 2 blocks from Fisk University. Okay, and then I said Harold Perry. He was Bishop Harold Perry. He pushed for desegregation also. Now, Bishop Perry used to come up, and the connection is with, say, Dr. Tarleton. Well, you say, what's the connection between Dr. Tarleton and Bishop Perry? Well, when Bishop Perry came up, his brother lived across the street from Dr. Tarleton. Dr. Tarleton had the swimming pool, so they would come in and he would come over and swim. A lot of discussions that they had at that time revolved around desegregation of the schools. Okay. I just kind of want to introduce you to those folks there. We're on time. I'm okay on time, right?
Yeah, there are a few questions.
Okay, yeah. Let me do the questions, yeah, because I kind of sometimes I fly out. So let me do some questions now.
Okay. Kathy Gurley asks, how did Fisk manage to continue educating without opposition? Or was the idea of not educating Blacks a religious objection?
Oh, okay. Fisk University. Fisk University had a national reputation. They had some big. Charles Johnson. Now he was the first Black president of FIS. He didn't become president in 1946, and he was president from 1946 to 1956. And the question was, how did FIS become continue once they what would you say, became a little bit more militant, if you will, in terms of desegregation. Fisk University, Charles Johnson had some benefactors who were kind of interested in the Rosenthal Foundation and 2 or 3. He was one of the great fundraisers for Fisk. Fisk had been going along fine. Let's see, 1866, it had been going along fine, and then around 1925, you had a situation where the students started objecting to the strict things on campus. For instance, if you on Fisk campus, male and female, you couldn't, when you're walking down the sidewalk on campus, you couldn't touch, you couldn't hold hands. Very strict situation. Remember, this was these were schools that were started by religious or supported primarily by religious organizations, which I think most of the private Black schools were. So I guess the answer would be, you had the religious organizations were supporting them. Once they started to become more desirous of certain rights, you had certain people who would support them, such as the Rosenbergs. Then when you get up into the 1960s, which you may be talking about that, when you had some disturbances and some activities on the different campuses, you did have a lot of the organizations, when they started doing the afros and going in there, and when they started doing the afros, you had a lot of organizations that took their money away. And the answer to your question, I think, was that Fisk survived pretty well for about 20 years, but their militant position in terms of desegregation hurt them in the 70s and the 80s. And the campus almost closed because of that. But in the early years that we're talking about now, they had support, financial support from religious organizations. They had financial support from certain benefactors who primarily up in the North, who were supportive of desegregation. Now, they had the Race Relations Institute in 1944. That was the big nationwide support for race relations. In other words, you had all the scholars come in and they would have an institute, and they would have a meeting over the summer, and they would talk about desegregation and ideas on in that respect. So when Dr. Johnson was here, he was able to, with his personality, he was able to raise funds, and I think that probably after Johnson, he had a couple of other presidents who could do the same thing. But in the 60s, when the folks started, we started growing our little afros and everything, I think a lot of the money went away. In the 70s and 80s, Fisk was really struggling, and I think they're coming back just now.
Mm-hmm.
What was your hair like in the 60s?
Oh, I had my fro then. And when I went to Ryan, one of the problems, you couldn't be that big at Father Ryan. And one of the things that I really suffered at Ryan, that 17, 18-year-old, one of the people in my class, they took him downstairs and he had a little mustache, and they dry shaved him. They shaved his mustache off because he didn't meet the Father Ryan role. And my thought was, I hope they didn't take me down there and try and shave my mustache off, because I said I wasn't going to allow that to happen. But he was a light-skinned person, and plus he had a little bit more, so there's a little more evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Bill,
Yes.
Bill, I hadn't fully appreciated that St. Vincent started as a mission from Holy Family. Could you speak a little bit more about the relationship between Holy Family and St. Vincent, and also about sort of the shift that you mentioned of the Black population from around Lafayette and Holy Family up to North Nashville and around the TSU Fisk.
Okay, be happy to. The idea, you know, one of the ideas. Now you had Bishop Byrne who died in 25. Then you had Bishop, you know, who really was supportive of the Black mission. You had Bishop Smith who came and he, you know, he was supportive also. And I think he died, I think in 34, 35. But his last, he came to St. Vincent to actually preach, and he got sick and died after that. After that, I think you had another bishop who was Bishop Adrian, who 30, I think he was 36. He wasn't as supportive of it. Okay, but your question was, okay, they split it over. They split it into, they had the mission that started in 1932, 33. And the idea was that, hey, you know, the more affluent Blacks will support a school. Now, that, I guess if you think about it, you know, you would expect, you know, you could expect it to happen. But to me, one of the things in the equation was that, you know, these folks that were going to the school were not Catholic. You know, there was always, in my mind, a dynamic between the church, I mean, the Catholic Church, you know, the Protestant Catholic dynamic is what I call it. When you had, when I was at St. Vincent, you had the people at St. Vincent who thought that the church was supporting the school too much. And then you had the people at the school who thought that the school was supporting the Catholic. In other words, you had this racial thing. I mean, you know, this not racial, but this religious aspect too. Okay, but when it came over, what happened as a result of that is that St. Vincent, when you had the mission, especially when you had the school, and you had Holy Family, and they became competitors. Okay, now there was only so many students, and it actually ended up with St. Vincent taking away a large number, well, a significant number of students and parishioners from Holy Family. In 1937, I think the Bishop Adrian said, hey, you know, I think I want to close Holy Family. Okay. Now, before closing it, he did a little study, and he said, okay, in 1940, he said, you know, I think the one of the problems with Holy Family is not they're costing us money. I don't want to pay money, but the problem may be the leadership at Holy Family. In other words, St. Vincent was doing pretty good, and they were under. Okay, I want to switch the leadership from the Franciscans. I mean, from the Josephites to the Franciscans. And he basically in 1940, he said, okay, he said, the problem is the leadership. So in 1940, he proposed, Bishop Adrian proposed, he actually sent a letter, he didn't propose. He said, look, he said, well, Josephites, we appreciate what you've been doing, but we don't need you anymore. So thank you, bye. I don't know if Father Gail is looking at this. I don't know, he may know a little bit about this, but so the Josephites in turn came back and they said, well, look, we got a contract. And what you did in Memphis, you're trying to do here. You know, you're trying to give us the poorest school and take it and give it to somebody else. So the dynamic, I guess, is that when you had two parishes that were competing, St. Vincent really was the richer parish in terms of wealth. You know, I don't know, I guess rich is a term that's relative there. But you had a situation where St. Vincent kind of had the, you know, it had the richer parish. You know, they ended up getting a new school, and it was I guess a contest between the two. Now, one of the other things too, when you talk about the relationship between St. Vincent and Holy Family said, hey, you know, we got Immaculate Mother Academy. St. Vincent only went to K through 8. We've got Immaculate Mother Academy, and we're struggling. So what we think you ought to do is you ought to make St. Vincent pay for Immaculate Mother Academy. Okay. And that didn't go down too well, with the St. Vincent. But I think that what you had is that, and in a way, I think they were right. You had the more fluent, better educated parishioners and school members that went to St. Vincent, and it became a problem, it became a problem for Holy Family. I'm not sure that I get what you wanted. I can go a little deep if you want me to.
No, that was great. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that, just in terms of race, when Bishop Adrian decided to get rid of the Josephites, and bring in the Franciscans, he also contacted about 5 or 6 other orders. And one of the orders, the Divine Word Order, they said, Bishop, we can send you a colored pastor. Would you like that? And the answer was no, not at this time. Got another question, Jim?
Here's the question.
If I could ask another question, Bill, you mentioned that Holy Family began accepting boys in 1917.
Yes, sir.
When Father Ryan began in 1925, 26, was there any discussion whatsoever about allowing Black boys at Father Ryan?
Not that I found. Remember, we still had segregated system then. It was very, very segregated. One of the things, now I'll get this one, sometimes you get me, you hit a little pick, in 19, the thing I couldn't understand is that, going to St. Vincent, being a Christian St. Vincent, we could play basketball in the parochial league, okay? When I was there in the 50s, we played basketball. But you couldn't play football. And that's something that bothered me for a long, long time. Then when I started doing some research for this paper, I think I found out the answer. I don't know, but I think I found out the answer. It's just kind of a side point, but just kind of personal to me, because what we did when I was in 62, we were told we could play football. And we practiced in the summertime. And then at the beginning of school, they said, you can't play football. Well, the only thing I could come up with is that it was who was in control. When the parochial basketball league was controlled by the diocese. Okay. Father Ryan High School. The football league was controlled by the Knights of Columbus. And now later on, I saw the letter from the Knights of Columbus, which said that, hey, you can't play, period. We're not ready for that. No reason, no explanation, you can't play. So I guess what I'm saying is the mood in the church, if you will, at that time, segregation was fine. Segregation was okay.
Hey, Bill, this is Gino. One quick note on that was we played at the Knights of Columbus out on Bosley Springs, and I went to Cathedral, and we had Black players, and the Knights of Columbus said you couldn't play. And you may recall that was the one year that we played out at St. Edward's. The parochial league played out there, and then the next year, and when the Knights of Columbus found out how much money they were losing by not having football, I guess segregation was a good, or integration was a good thing. when the dollars started disappearing from the Knights of Columbus. So I think that was, we went back in, I think 1964, the fall of 64, 63, I guess 63 was when we were out at St. Edward's, and then we went to there. At about that same time, I had the boys at St. Mary's Orphanage during the summertime, and we had 3 black kids on our team, and I'd take them to the Knights of Columbus to swim early in the morning before anyone was there, and got a call from the Grand Knight that it was too crowded and we wouldn't be able to do that anymore. So needless to say, I don't think it had anything to do with the crowd. So appreciate everything you're doing here today too, friend.
Okay, thank you, Gino.
Bill's a pretty good tight end too, so.
No, wide receiver. Now, I wasn't no tight end now. Yeah, that you know, that fit in right. And you know, in the next thing, you know, I talk about, you know, I talk about the desegregation process, which to me is the most interesting part of this. But I was just trying to give you the environment that we had back then, you know, and you really can't see it, but you had Bishop Byrne, who was real supportive of desegregation. And part of the reasons why he was supportive of desegregation, he actually looked, the Catholic Church is probably one of the most liberal organizations you can find. He went out and he actually found the 1880 ordinance, which talked about, you know, desegregation. And the problem was that once it came back, it didn't, the proclamations at the high level, they didn't really fall down to the lower levels. And as you'll see, we had to have some people move out before you could actually have desegregation. Next, I have a slide that says, you know, even after Brown versus Board of Education, you know, so what? You know, and a lot of people don't realize that there were 2 decisions in Brown versus Board of Education. You know, one said desegregate in 1854. But then, 1954. And then the second one came down and it said, hey, you know, when people complained about desegregation, you know, it came to term with all deliberate speed. And that was a term that was interpreted by many people in many different ways.
Hey, I just missed you. I'm Gail Stahl. I was the Newman chaplain from 69 to 73 at St. Vincent's. And I've got a question. I work with the Tarletons and Mallets and, you know, all those guys. I forgot to ask, did the Catholic students, when TSU students desegregated the lunch counters in Nashville, did any of the Catholic students, do you know, participate in that?
Some did. We got it was a letter, and I'm getting this from, you know, just documentation. It's a letter from Bishop Adrian to the pastor of St. Vincent, Father Kenneth, and he said, you know, some of your students were participating in those marches, and you know, that's against some rule of the diocese. So no, it really was. I mean, it was. I kind of want to just get into that next week, but you know, that was kind of what it was. And the marches, when they went by Cathedral, as Gino's school, when they went by Cathedral, that's what, you know, Dr. Tarleton, and that's kind of what generated the whole desegregation thing, because they told the students, they said, look, you know, these marches are coming right down West End, but you better not even think about going out there and getting in the march. Okay. but that's kind of, you know, I was going to kind of get that for, you know, for the desegregation aspect. And then that's when, you know, Dr. Tarleton right there, you know, that's when he, you know, kind of sprung into action. And it was different because he was very cerebral. You know Dr. Tarleton.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Tarleton is kind of like, he's, you know, this man, he thinks, he does everything, he's quiet, he's deliberative, and his wife is just the opposite, you know. I mean, just the opposite, you know.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, you know, that was, I was going to kind of talk about that the next time, but basically that's what, to me, that's what generated the whole desegregation thing, when they told the students, hey, you know, you can't do that. And then you had this little coalition that kind of got together and in my mind forced the diocese to desegregate. So to me, that's probably the best portion of it. You know, this was kind of like a little warm up, if you will. But I was just trying to show, you know, what the institutions were, and a little prelude to desegregation. But you know, a lot of people I think say, hey, you know, well, you know, the diocese decided to you know, desegregate, you know, in the 1960s, you know, when they let, you know, Willie Brown could do this and do.
Yeah.
You know, it really wasn't that. It was a little backstory to it, you know.
Yeah. I don't think Bishop Durick would have put up with that
I
stuff.
know, that's what I was, yeah.
Well, that's the reason why Bishop Durick was brought in.
Yeah. Oh, is it good?
Yeah. That'll be part 2 next week, because John told me, he said the last person went over, you know, but I was just trying to pick this up to, you know, to about 1954, and then just, you know, to the segregated part. Then we talk about desegregation the next time. And the segregated part, you know, to me, the desegregation part is the interesting part, you know. No questions, John?
Any other questions, folks?
Okay, here I am. Is it okay if I talk?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was just curious because I remember it was a while before the Knights of Columbus also integrated, because I can remember my dad being involved in that big discussion. But I was wondering if you could say a little bit about the Knights of Claver, St. Peter Claver. Were they were kind of the substitute maybe for the Knights of Columbus? Could you give a little bit of history on that?
Yeah, the Knights of Peter Claver, I thought I had a slide on that, but I must have dropped out sometime. The Knights of Peter Claver was started, I think, gosh, you're gonna make me mess in the early 1900s. And they were an alternative to the Knights of Columbus. Nashville was the number 5. They started them, you know, just based on chronological basis, and started with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nashville was number 5. We had a fellow named Singleton who was very, very involved, you know, with the Knights of Peter Claver. And the Knights of Peter Claver were pretty big in Nashville in the early years. I'm saying probably to about 1920, 25. And then they just kind of lapsed. And then in I want to say the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, it was a fellow from Meharry University Meharry Medical College, who came in and revived the Knights. But basically, they were trying to do some of the same things that the Knights of Columbus would do. The first, and it's 2 people who joined the Knights of Peter Claver, the Knights of Columbus, from the Knights of and that was Mr. Pulley, who just died. Okay, and his was kind of a sweet sour thing, you know. He had a lot of people with the Knights of Columbus who really made him feel bad, you know. But then he had some people who really defended him. So Knights of Peter Claver, they were here, and they had some impact on the parish, but not a whole lot. It was kind of the thing where most of the men in the Knights of Peter Claver were also in the men's club, and the men's club, if you will, got the most the most publicity, the most credit. But yeah, it was around, and it was working. But I think one of the biggest things, they had an insurance feature, which I think, you know, some of the folks did. So it was here, but it was kind of small, you know, a small group, maybe 8 to 10, and it didn't have as much impact as, say, the Knights of Columbus, you know.
Maybe you said this, but the reason there had to be an alternative to the Knights of Columbus is because they didn't accept Black members.
Right. Knights of Columbus would not accept Black members. So they started their own thing.
When did that change, and did the Knights ever sort of formally recognize that had been their stance?
No, I might ask Gino that. I know that Mr. Pulley is probably in the 60s. Hey, Gino, when they had the first come to the Knights of Columbus?
I want to say it's about the same time I graduated from Father Ryan, mid 60s, late 60s, right around there.
Yeah, my dad was involved in the work of integration at that time, and it was in the 60s. I hope I'm not, yeah. I just can remember us coming home and talking about it. And he was somebody trying to support getting the Knights, opening it up and have it be desegregated.
Yeah, there were two individuals. I can't remember one thing, but Mr. Pulley was one of the first ones that came in there. And like I said, he was I think Mr. Pulley was a businessman, and part of it was he was a businessman. He thought they would be good, for business, and he did. And he was kind of bitter, but then in the end, he kind of came around. You talked to Miss Pulley, she said, he had some people who basically would do the N-word on him. But then you had some other people who would, come in and defend him. And I think one of his, but I'm not real sure, I'm not even sure that they had something that said only Blacks, a formal policy that said only Blacks could be there. But, that was formal or informal, that was the way. And I had one person who joined both of them. There was no prohibition against that one. He was actually over the Knights of Peter Claver, and he, went and joined the Knights of Columbus.
Bill, this is Mary Lou O'Gorman.
How you doing, St. Louis?
Thanks,
How
Bill.
you doing?
I'm good. I'm curious how accessible all the information you're presenting is. The first person ever told me any of this was Father John Raphael, who was a Josephite, and he was recounting the history of the Josephites here. But, first of all, I'm not a native, but still, how hard is it to pull all this together? You've got a lot of information, and it's important to Nashville.
Yeah, well, I had to kind of, it all depends. I went to the archives at the diocese, and they would show you some information. They, I don't know, they were reluctant to show me letters from the bishop, but I had letters from Katharine Drexel to the bishop. Okay, so I had some information in the files of St. Vincent because that, and Dr. Charlton, he just took meticulous notes and had documents, and I mean, he had documents going all the way back to the 1800s, so that's where I kind of, you have to know him, you have to know. And then the other lady, I got some information from a Lois Winston. She went to Immaculate Mother Academy, and she called me up there. She said, Bill, she said, I told my daughter that when I die, I'm gonna leave these papers to you. So most of them were at the, you get to the diocese, and they were, and then we had some in the files of St. Vincent, which were from the Josephites. I had Father Furry, he actually went out and did some stuff. Another, just so those were my basic sources, but mine were kind of like all the source documents, the St. Anthony Messenger and reports. But I just kind of got those, and then when I was doing my paper, I just kind of like everything I saw, I made a Xerox copy of. So now I've got like 2 file drawers of information, which is kind of just thrown in the drawer. I need to catalog it and get it.
Did Thomas Stritch's book on the history of the Catholic Church in Tennessee or Nashville, did that bring anything in about the Black Catholics?
I think I may be wrong, but I think Stritch's book is 250, 300 pages. Yeah, and I think he's got 3 references to Black Catholics. Oh. And it's kind of like, okay, there was a school in such and such, and it hid this, and it was school, and it out of the 200 and some pages, the whole treatment doesn't even encompass one page.
That's disappointing.
Bill, I think I've shared it with John, but there are actually 2 dissertations that have been written in the past 15, 20 years on some of this. One was written by a professor who's now a fellow who's now Professor Trevecca. He was a history professor at MTSU, and he did a really extensive dissertation on the Holy Family property and looked at it through a totally different lens, but it is a wealth of information about what happened at Holy Family. And then there was a dissertation out of UT Knoxville that also looked at some length at Black Catholics in Tennessee.
Yeah, now I met the gentleman from Rebecca. I met him. We went over the other day. You know, the building that they are rehabbing with all the purple lights in it. Have you seen that?
Right.
You know, which was supposedly that was a rectory. Yeah, I met him. Rebecca from called me and we sat down, you know, and talked, you know, about a month ago. And then I'm not sure, but the dissertation from UT was from a lady, a nun, I believe, named Kennedy.
Right.
And she looked at I just found that, you know, this week. I hadn't had a chance. It's rather long too, but she looked at Holy Family and some of the educational factors from 1898 to 1908. I mean, you know, she did a whole lot on just 10 years, you know, talking about education, how, why, when, and what. Yeah. But those are 2 very good ones.
Bill, could I ask a question about the Diocesan Archives? Did they allow you to see any of the materials that may have spoken to whether or not Bishop Miles or the diocese owned slaves?
You know what? I did not, you know, when I did this, I didn't ask for it. When I did this, you know, I was looking at, you know, 1900 to 1955. So I didn't go into Bishop Miles. Now, when Barbara Baltz was the librarian, when I went there, and I don't know if you know Miss Baltz, who's just a really nice lady, but I would get a book and I say, hey, can I look at the register for Black Catholics, you know, in the Holy Family, you know, like the Sacramento Register. I would get the book and she would come in there and sit down there with me, just kind of watch me, you know, as I come through the pages with the books, you know, and I after about, you know, 2 or 3 months, you know, I was at the point where she would actually let me go in the room by myself, without her. We have a new fellow named Brent Weby. Brent, I think it's Weby. He's a lot. He's a little more open, you know, in terms of giving you, you know, allowing you access to different things. But you know, I think, you know, the access to the bishop's letters, you know, I don't, you know, I you know, it was kind of like, it's kind of like, you know, I said, what about it? I said, well, you know, we need to kind of keep those. But for my portion, I saw all the letters from Katharine Drexel responding to the bishop, you know, and they had kind of a interesting relationship, you know. The bishop was kind of, you know, he was kind of saying, hey, look, you know, we've got, and I'm oversimplifying, but, you know, we've got all these, you know, we need some money for the gutters, and you know, the gutters are falling off this building, and this is here, you know, we need some money for this, you know, can you give us some money for this? And then she kind of come back with, you know, we built the building, you know, we sent you the nuns, you know, we got, you know, 64 organizations to talk about, you know, we can't, you know, give you every little thing, but, you know, if you know, we can't give you $400, but, you know, we'll give you, you know, $50. Another interesting thing, when I looked through the notes there, in the initial negotiations with the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, in terms of salary, I think they made half of what the other teachers made. You know, he said, it's all I can afford to give to you. So yeah, I would say, you know, I don't know, you know, I wasn't denied access. I want to be fair. I wasn't denied access to anything. I assumed I couldn't get some things, but like I said, Dr. Tarleton, he had some, he's got papers, on top of papers,
Although I just threw up a poll. Most of you have seen it. I was curious about folks' exposure to Black Catholic history. So if you can finish that poll, I showed out of the 28 people who responded, one person suggests that she or he has a decent to thorough understanding of Black Catholic history. 13 people, that's about 50%, have some understanding, and another 50% have little to no understanding of Black Catholic history, which I think gives us some perspective on where we're all at. There's a question in the chat. Maureen asks, why are the archives not open to Nashville Catholics?
I went out to the archives. You can go out there, and, especially now. Like I said, it's just a little this and that. Part of it, I think, some of the records I was looking at, to be honest with you, I think they put them on microfiche now, so they are more stable. But when I went out there first, say like the records from 1902. You could almost, you could touch the pages, they would fall apart, So yeah, but you can go out there now, and like I said, Brent is a little bit more, to me, maybe a little bit more organized, so yeah, they're open. You can call them, and in fact, he will actually look up some things for you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I wanted to find a picture of the last graduation class, and sometimes you hesitant to ask somebody to go do your work for you. So I called Miss Winston and asked her, and she called, and he got back with me. Yeah, but they are open, and it seems, like I said, it seems to be now, when they, it seems to be, they've got bigger space, more room. They put a bunch of information on microfiche, so you don't have to worry about it, tearing up. So yeah, they are open though. And they actually, when I talked to him the last couple of weeks, he's just been very helpful. He bought my lunch a couple of times.
Before we close, and you're welcome to stay as long as you want to answer questions, but would you say a little bit about the scholarship and the endowment?
Oh yeah. I'll talk about the Katharine Drexel scholarship. Somehow or another, when I went to my 100th anniversary, not 100, 50th anniversary, my graduation from Father Ryan, I tried to get some other Black students to come and was unsuccessful. When I spoke, I think at the mass, and there were about 80 something people, and there were 3 Blacks. There was me, there was my wife, and my granddaughter. And my granddaughter said, "Granddaddy, where are the Black people? You said this was a family. Where are the Black people?" And as a result of that, about a week or two later, I said, I'm gonna try. And I did try and get folks to come at least the next year, and people had a lot of issues. The Black students had a lot of issues with Father Ryan, and some reason, I think in some ways it may be the way I kind of was brought up. I think I was born on the other side of the tracks, and let me put it, I guess, where my grandmama told me. She said, "Son," she said, "let me tell you something. It's only 3 people in this world that love you." She said, "I love you." No, she said, "God loves you, your mama loves you, and I love you. And sometimes I worry about your mama." My point there is that I really didn't, the way I've been, I really didn't expect a whole lot from, Father Ryan. They gave me a good education. Some other people may have wanted some other things, but it was hard to offend me, just unless you touched me, did something like that, avert. So I don't know, but anyway, I tried to get some other people to come. So I said, "Look, I'm gonna try and people told me about issues they had. And I said, I'm gonna try and get start a scholarship based on Katharine Drexel. Now, one of the first people I went to see was Ogino right there, you know, and he said, how much money you need? And I felt bad because I kind of lowballed it. No, he was fine. You know, he said, name your number, and then I named the number, and he said, oh, okay, that's all. But what I tried to do is I said, look, I said, to me, Kathryn, I mean, when I went to Father Ryan, and I didn't go in the 9th grade because I didn't have any money. You know, that was one of the reasons why I didn't go. But somebody, some kind of way, helped support me going to Father Ryan. So I said I was going to try and do the same thing, you know, just try and support some Black students going to Father Ryan. I came up with the idea. Like I said, I went to see Paul Rowland, who was another, you know, football player at Father Ryan. And then Harry Gibbs, you know, and that was it, you know. And then after I left that, the first person I went to see was Gino, and he was so responsive. So basically, we set a goal of, I wanted to set a goal of $50,000 because it's a minimum you can do. And Paul Rowland said, no, Bill, you can't do that. You know, you can't do that. So anyway, we ended up setting a goal of $150,000 to try and set up an endowment under Katharine Drexel in order to assist Black students who go to Father Ryan. And the idea was, you know, one, you assist Black students to go to Father Ryan, and two, when you do that, when you make financial contributions to an institution, to me, you have a voice in it. So you're doing a couple of things, and I'm trying, and that's all we're trying to do. So now we're trying to, you know, looks like we're going to make the $150,000. So I'm just trying to let anybody who wants to contribute. The lady who I told you about, Miss Winston, okay, she sends me, she said, Bill, I can't sing you no more, but she said, every December, I'm gonna send you a little amount of money. So I've got contributions. I looked the other day, I visited later the other day, I just looked at my card, I opened the envelope, she sent me a check for $25. So we're just trying to generate some support to carry on the legacy of Katharine Drexel. I mean, you know, she was the one, she did Catholic education for Black students. And what people don't know is that she did almost as much for Indians. You know, she had a big Indian thing too. So, and I'm just asking people, you know, just to try and, you know, if you feel like, you know, try and support that. And, you know, we're on the Father Ryan web, or you just, you know, call me and I can tell you how to get there. I mean, how you can contribute. So that's it. Don't do a hard sell. That's just what we do. And thank you for considering.
As I mentioned, I'll send out some information later this week about that for anyone who's interested in participating. Well, let's call this our hard stop, and then we can continue taking some questions. But next Sunday, we're going to welcome Paige Courtney Barnes, a young Black Catholic woman who's going to talk a little bit about how racial justice intersects with Catholic social teaching. And then 2 weeks from today, we'll have Deacon Bill back to talk a little bit more about desegregation and where we left off today. So Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And Keith, if we have any more
Thank you for
questions,
that wonderful talk. Beautiful. Boy, I learned more about this than I did in my 4 years at St. Vincent's. Thank you.
You made Father Hitchcock proud, Bill.
Now, you know how he said, Father Hitchcock, you know how I found out that Black students could come to Father Ryan, I mean, to Holy Family in 1917. The boys could come in 1917. It's from a master's thesis by Father Hitchcock.
Really?
That's where I found it. I mean, you know, you try and find it, but that's where I got that information from. So I figured, hey, Father Hitchcock says so and so. Thank you, Gino.
Work, Bill. Proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, y'all have a great week.
Good.
Happy
Boy.
Valentine's Day, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wonderful. Good. Okay, let's see here.
Does anyone else have any more questions before I shut this down?
I can't hear. What happened? Okay, maybe this. Shoot.
Out there, and we'll see you all back next Sunday.
Okay.
Bill, I want to thank you a lot of the people that you mentioned have been people that I've got to know over the years, and it was just kind of neat. I knew Dr. Tarleton and just some of the others. Lois is still a good friend. She wants me to put her funeral together.
Oh, I can believe that. I can believe it. Yeah.
That's what she told me.
Yeah, you know, the idea, you know, when I get it, you know, I knew a lot of these folks. And like I said, I thought, you know, Dr. Tarleton, you know, because he wasn't militant, he had the short haircut and all that, you know, wore a towel all the time, you know, but, you know, they really were some hardworking, decent people who worked behind the scenes and were very, very successful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, John.